Welcome to our tutorial on Python logging best practices. First up, we'll explore what logging is all about in the context of Python programming. Next, I'll walk you through setting up a logger, which is essential for tracking application behavior and diagnosing issues. Then, we dive into configuring handlers and formatters to customize how your logs are outputted. After that, we'll discuss using log levels effectively. Think debug, info, warning, error, and critical to manage the detail of what gets recorded. We'll also cover formatting logs for better readability, ensuring they're easy to understand. Finally, I'll share some best practices for structured logging, making sure your logs are as informative and organized as possible. Let's get started. Welcome to our introduction to logging in Python. Logging is like keeping a diary for your application. It helps you track what's happening, especially when things go wrong. Imagine you're developing a game and something isn't working as expected. With logging, you can see exactly where the issue lies. And guess what? You don't have to stop at development. Logs are super useful in production too. They help you keep an eye on your application's health, ensuring it runs smoothly. So whether you're coding a simple script or a complex web app, learning about logging will be like having a secret weapon for debugging and monitoring. Let's dive into the best practices of using Python's built-in logging module next. Welcome to our tutorial on setting up a logger in Python. First things first, we use the method to either get an existing logger or create a new one. For instance, if you want your logs to be identified by my_logger, you'd write. Now, let's configure our logger with handlers and formatters. Handlers determine where the log messages go, like the console or a file, and formatters define how these messages look. For example, if you wanted to output logs both to the console and a file with a specific format, you'd set up your handlers and formatters accordingly. This setup not only helps in debugging but also keeps your code clean and maintainable. Welcome to our basic logger setup tutorial. Today, we're going to cover the essentials of setting up logging in your Python projects. Let's dive into the code on this slide. First, you'll see we import the module. This is essential because it provides a flexible framework for emitting log messages from your applications. Next, we create a logger instance with the name my_logger. Can be anything that suits your project. Lastly, we set up our basic configuration using, which sets the default logging level to debug. This means all messages at or above this level will be logged by default. Remember, in real projects, you might want to configure more settings and handlers for better control over where logs go and how they look. Stay tuned as we explore more of Python's powerful logging capabilities. Welcome to our journey into the heart of logging in Python. Today, we're diving deep into configuring handlers and formatters. Handlers decide where your log messages go, be it a file or the console. For example, you might use to send logs to a file, or to stream them directly to the console. Meanwhile, formatters are like the stylistic choices for your logs. They define how each message looks, from timestamps and log levels to custom messages. Imagine using a formatter to add color to your log entries. It makes debugging not only effective but also visually engaging. So, let's get coding and make our logs both informative and interactive. Now, let's dive into how to add a file handler and formatter in our logging setup. This is crucial for Python logging best practices because it helps us record logs in a structured format that can be easily read later. Here's what we're doing. We start by importing the module, then create a logger named my_logger. Next, we define a file handler and set its formatter to include details like timestamp, logger name, log level, and message. Finally, we add this handler to our logger so that all logs will be directed into app.log with the specified format. This ensures our logs are always well organized and easy to follow. Welcome to our tutorial on using log levels effectively. In Python, we use 5 main log levels: debug, info, warning, error, and critical. Each level is important for different scenarios. For instance, if you want to track every step of your program, use. But if something goes wrong and needs immediate attention, opt for. Let's take a quick example. If you're checking user input, you might use when the input looks suspicious but not outright incorrect. This helps you quickly identify potential issues without cluttering your logs with too much detail. Remember, Choosing the right log level can make debugging and monitoring your application much more manageable. Stay tuned for more tips on Python logging best practices. Welcome to this tutorial on using different log levels in Python. Let's dive right into the code on our slide. We start by importing the logging module, which is essential for handling logs in your applications. Then we create a logger with the name my_logger. Now let's see what each log level does. A debug message is great for troubleshooting detailed information, like when you need to know every step of an operation. Info messages are used for general informational purposes. Warning messages inform us that something unexpected happened but didn't fail. Errors indicate a failure that prevented the program from performing its task, and critical messages are reserved for severe issues that could cause your application to crash. Each one serves a unique purpose in diagnosing and maintaining the health of your app. Welcome to our next slide on formatting logs for better readability. In Python logging, formatters are like the paintbrushes in your toolbox. They let you customize what gets printed out every time a log message is generated. To make logs more readable and useful, we typically include 4 key pieces of information. When the log was created, timestamp, which part of our program generated it, logger name, its severity level, like info or error, and the actual message itself. For example, you might see something like this: 2023-10-0415:12:30, 487, my_logger. Info, user logged in successfully. This format gives us a clear picture of what happened, when it happened, and where to look for more details. Let's see how we can set this up in our Python scripts. Alright, let's dive into how we can customize our log messages using formatters in Python logging. First off, we import the module and create a logger named my_logger. Then, we set up a file handler to write logs to a file called app.log. Here's where it gets interesting. We define a formatter that specifies what information each log message should include: the timestamp, the name of the logger, the severity level of the message, and the actual message itself. We attach this formatter to our file handler, and then add the handler to our logger. Finally, we log an info message saying, "This is a custom log message." With these few lines, you can now control exactly what gets logged. Pretty powerful stuff for debugging and monitoring your application's behavior. Welcome to our tutorial on best practices for structured logs. Structured logs are super powerful because they let us include all the relevant data in a clear and machine-readable format. Think of them as having an address book that includes timestamps, user IDs, session IDs, everything you need to understand what's happening. For example, here's how a structured log might look: timestamp, October 18th, 2023, 14:48 and 5 seconds, user_ID, 12,345. Message. This is a structured log message. By including these details, you can easily track and analyze logs for troubleshooting or monitoring purposes. This format makes it much easier to automate tasks and integrate with other systems. So, let's make sure our Python logs are as informative and organized as possible. Welcome to our tutorial on creating structured logs in Python. Structured logging is essential for making your log data more machine-readable and easier to analyze. Today, we'll use the built-in module. First, let's set up a logger with a specific name, my_logger. Then, we create a dictionary called. This contains key value pairs like timestamps, user IDs, and custom messages. Finally, we log the structured data using the level. As you can see in the code, we use to convert our dictionary into a JSON string before logging it. This ensures that our logs are consistent and easily parsed by tools. Happy coding! Welcome back. Let's dive into the key takeaways from our Python logging best practices. First, always use to create your logger. This ensures a consistent naming convention and easier management of logs throughout your application. Next, don't forget to configure handlers for where you want your logs to go, be it a file or console, and formatters to control the output format. Log levels are crucial. They help categorize message severity from debug to critical. Lastly, implement structured logging. This makes parsing and analyzing logs much easier by including metadata directly in the log messages. That's it for today. Happy coding!